I went with a single background image, and because the only thing that's different from one game level to the next is the way this square is, you know, sliced up. And I didn't want to load a bunch of different images. So let's just go with medium for the moment. So you can't see them, but there's rectangles that are over the top of these arrows here, rectangle spaces, plus this quit button. And I'm using the get mouse function. I started off with the check mouse function, and I didn't really see much of an advantage to it because, like I said before in some previous class, this is a turn-based game. It doesn't go any faster than what you ever decide you're going to do. So the get mouse function is pretty much sufficient. Movement. Let's see here. No stitching so far. Now it's really hard to see, probably from where you're sitting, but there's 3 characters up here at the top. There are 3 letters, and it could be, this has 3 dashes, meaning nothing. This is a dash, a G, and a dash. This is a B, a couple of dashes. A B and a G, because this is a gold, this is a pit, this is the hero. Looking for the stench part of it. Usually when I fly around like this is usually when I stumble over the top of it without realizing it. Oh, for God's sakes, why is it being so damn hard to find?
It's like Minesweeper.
I know. So the hardest part that I implemented last, before the actual scoring part of it, which is the, oh, there it is. Before the scoring part of the game, you know, where it shows the scores at the end, was the well, the adjacency was the second to last. The next thing was making sure that whenever was the whole dead live wumpus thing was a big pain in the butt to get straightened out. As far as if you the scoring difference between the two and whether or not you're shooting a live wumpus or a dead wumpus. So what I was going to cover today was the shooting of the arrow concept. So I can tell from this, there's an S here, which means it's got to be one of these 4 squares, and each of these 3 squares I have visited already, so that means it's not any of these 3, so it's got to be here. So I'm going to shoot an arrow up. So you can see the result here. Up here is the score modification, down here is the number of arrows, and then if I move up, there's the wumpus thing. So then when I hit quit, again, that is the string value text entry dialog we made on the previous homework. Type in the 3 initials. All it's really checking here is that you typed in 3 characters. If you don't, it just keeps circling back and forth until you actually get to it.
Can't you set the entry to only take 3 characters?
You can set it to be a width of 3 characters. They can still type as many as they want.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And like I said, I didn't want to get that specific because I just wanted to use that old function that I already programmed from the previous homework. This is used in the format statement to make these things come out nice, orderly fashion. This is a single text output. This is a similar concept that I did on the triangle program, where on the side of the triangle we had to put the side lengths, the angles, and the area, if you remember that homework.
Yep.
This is essentially the same concept here as I did on that homework. You know, I picked a spot in the middle of the window, and I built a really long piece of text right here with carriage returns embedded in it, using the format statement to get these to come out in the nice orderly locations. and went from there. Now what I'll probably do on, today's Tuesday, what I'll probably do on Thursday, if I don't cover a little bit of it today, is the process that we have to go through with respect to this scores and the file, loading them, and there's a couple of processes you gotta keep in mind when you do that. I may get to a little bit of the sorting today, but more of a generic sorting kind of mentality. So, let's see here, let me just show this real quick. I thought something was gonna come up. What is the deal? There it is. So this is a single image that I made in PowerPoint. You saw this already before. I adjusted this 1 pixel because it was 401 by 401. And then these items here are just part of PowerPoint. The only thing here that's not part of PowerPoint is this thing on the top here, which I made at cooltext.com. PowerPoint is able to recognize the PNG graphic image, so it maintained the transparency on the logo. And then when I was in PowerPoint, I saved it as a GIF image, and then loaded it into the Python program as a GIF image. And, you know, I fooled around with this probably more time than I probably should have, because, you know, you gotta come out right. And so it took me a while to figure out where the rectangles on here should be, and where the rectangle on this was, and where to put this piece of text, where to put that piece of text, and then there's another piece of text here that goes in there. And so I would say all of that fooling around took probably about an hour or so to do. There was a lot of screwing around, but it got there eventually. Alrighty. Let's get rid of that. Alrighty. Now we want to pull up Python, get some pins out. And I think I'm going to pull this board up. So we have our grid. Oh, that's awesome.
Oh my gosh.
Let's try this. There we go, that's a little better. Can you see that back here in the cheap seats?
Yep.
Yeah. All right.
It's cheap. Yeah, you can afford tickets.
Alrighty. I'm just going to go with the mentality of the board locations, because to some extent it doesn't really matter what the pixels are. The pixels aren't really relevant. It's just the board locations. I'm making that way too small, I can see already. I have no idea how many this is going to end up with. I'm lucky it'll be some number between 8 and 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Wow, how about that? Should have made just something I could project that was a freaking grid. That would have been a smart thing to do. And do we think that came up with the same number? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Awesome. That's all right. We'll just deal with it. So let's assume for the moment again this is column 0, and again I don't really care what the maximum column number is. I'm just going to call it M. In fact, I'll call it MC for maximum column. In fact, we don't even need to call it maximum column because this is a square. It's the same number both directions. So that's a 0 there. This is row 0 and this is row M. Hypothetically the same. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, let's. Because of my OCD, I got to do this. All right, now it's And our little guy, no guys here today? All right, so I can say guy and man and all that, and not have to be like sexist or something.
That's offensive.
That's okay.
So our little guy's here, and that is 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Oh, that's a freaking coincidence. I didn't really want to do that exactly. Now, what the hell? We'll just do the there. Alrighty. So we can fire the arrow up, down, left, or right. If someone has a chance, can you close that door back there? Because I think that, especially since you guys are where you're at, I'm going to have to yell more than normal. So we know what board location he's at. We have our hero listing, and it's his X location and his Y location. Let's put a little H in front of that. And if we're going to fire up, we need to count from his square up to the top. So we need to count, if we're going to fire up, the column number is going to stay whatever his column number is. And we're going to say something like 4 Y, for lack of a better term, in range. And we need to start counting at his current position this way, which this is HX and this is HY. Alright? Hopefully you're all with me on that so far. So he needs to start counting from HY, and we need to stop at 0. Well, we know that the range, whatever number we give it here, it will count to the one just before that. So if we want to stop at 0, we got to tell it that our last number is -1. Now this is counting from a big number to a small number, so we need to increment it by going down. So the third value, if you remember, is a step value -1. So we're going to have a temporary position which is the same this direction as the hero, and it's going to be whatever our Y is that's in this range. And then what we want to do is check to see if temp position in our Wumpus list. If this position is in the Wumpus list, then that means we hit a Wumpus. It's either in this square or one of these squares. If this gets through this entire range and never hits a Wumpus, then we know we didn't hit anything and the arrow went all the way to the wall. We have that kind of response to give to the user. So when we get out of this thing, how do we know we hit a Wumpus? Well, we have a couple different choices. Let's just call R for the moment for result equals 0. This means hit the wall. Now if this ends up happening here where we do have the Wumpus, we need to know, we need to figure out which Wumpus we hit, if there's more than one, and whether or not if Wumpus is alive. If Wumpus is alive, then we just pick a number. Doesn't really matter at this point. else, fortunately, life and death are Boolean choices. So when we exit, we get out of this loop eventually, we're down here someplace, then we can decide what we're going to do if we want to based on these kinds of choices here. The other option is to write actually in here to do what we want to do. The problem is if we have two Wumpus and they both happen to be in the same order, let's say one is here and one is here, we need to stop looking for a Wumpus if we fired up as soon as we get to the first one. So let's just set some kind of a flag variable equal to false. So we can say, well, if Wumpus is in the Wumpus list, and we say and not F, meaning this is still false. And then down in here, we go F equals true. So the first time we get to a Wumpus, we set this flag to true, which says, I don't know how many Wumpus we potentially can hit here, but we have just found at least one, and any further Wumpus that happen to be in the same line of the arrow path, we don't want to count them.
Well, if he has a high-powered crossbow, I don't see why.
That would be for version 2 of the game. If you have a list of Wumpus, there's a command that said you want to do something like, I'm just going to make up a variable, P equals, let's say your list of Wumpus is called WList. If you use the index command, I believe it is, and then in here, once we know from this if temp position XY here is in the Wumpus list, once we know this is true, I've got down to here, we need to know which one of these Wumpus we're dealing with. Take this value, index it into this list, this returns the position in the index that that value is at. Now, the Wumpus list is the only list that we're going to generate that we need to know a specific index in it. Because when we step into a pit or we step on a treasure, to some extent, we don't really care which one it is. We just want to know, did we step in one of those things or not? If we fire the arrow down, so this is if we're firing the arrow up, pretty much all of this activity is exactly the same except for a couple of the numbers in here. So if we're going to fire the arrow down, it's still the same column, so we still use an H of X, we can still use Y, or we can say for Y in range, and we're still going to start at the guy's beginning position, HY. What's that? Oh, nothing. All right, go ahead. And we want to end at M. Now, we're kind of playing fast and loose here a little bit with M. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually put M out here a little bit. Because M is going to equal some number, 8, 9, or 10, depending on the size of the board. And this square here, technically speaking, is really M minus 1, right? So if we put M here, we know it'll automatically increment by 1. You can put comma 1 in there if you wanted, just for visual continuity. It doesn't make any difference. It's going to do it anyway. So this will then increment from this square and then count down through all of these, given all the rest of this code exactly the same. Alright? This is for down. If you go to the left, again, it's all in the same row, so the Y part isn't going to change. But it's a very similar concept to here, but we're just going to be doing X. So we can say for X in range. And again, we got to start at his position, this direction, which is HX. Since we're going to the left, that's towards 0. But again, we got to go a little bit past that, so minus 1. We got to tell it we want to increment in the negative direction, so we have to have the step here be minus 1. And the only other thing is down here is this right here is slightly different, where it says if temp position X, comma, HY, and not F. That's awesome. Turn that on then. That's not terribly helpful either. So you can see here, the only thing we're incrementing now is the X coordinate, and the Y is staying the same. We're going horizontally. And so this here got a really similar looking appearance to this right here. Except we're just doing it in the X direction instead of the Y direction. So you might guess, if we're going to go to the right, it's going to be 4x in range. And again, we're going to start off at the guy's position. And we want to go out to the very last square that direction, which in this case is M. And you know, we can tell it to increment by 1, it'll do that automatically. And then this piece of code here falls right under here. Same piece of code here and here. Just so you can see this is different. So the code is ever so slightly different, but it's the internal parts are exactly the same. So let me try something over here because I don't want to erase that. I just love it when other instructors are not freaking courteous and erase the damn boards when they're done with my class. You know, I stay after class and erase the boards of all the crap that I put on them. There's a sheet over here on this card. So you could make a big if statement that says, if the person clicked on the up button when they fired the arrow, do the first piece and then do the second piece if they did the down, do the third piece if they did left, and do the fourth piece if they did right. But almost all of your code